Alright, so welcome to video 1 as we start looking at positive and negative numbers, also integers, rational numbers, comparing and ordering, absolute value, lots of good stuff, the coordinate plane, various things that we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks. But before we get started, first lesson, understanding positive and negative numbers. So the first word that we want to look at and the first definition to kind of help us get us started is the word integer. Now some of you should have heard of this one because you've had it on a vocabulary quiz, so it should be at least vaguely familiar to you. But the integer is all whole numbers and their opposites. Now anytime you use a definition, there's always other words in the definition to break down. So before we can really understand an integer, we need to know what the whole numbers are and we need to know what their opposites are. So an integer is all whole numbers and their opposites. So a whole number is just like it kind of sounds. It shows quantity. It's a whole, okay, such as 1, 2, 3, and so on for infinity from there on. So its opposites are going to have the exact same distance from 0 on the number line. So the whole number 1 would have an opposite of negative 1. The whole number 5 would have an opposite of negative 5. The number negative 10 would have an opposite of 10 because on the number line they're an equal distance apart. So if you look, here's our number line, here's number 1. So its opposite would be over here, negative 1. Equal distance. Now I know my drawing is not the best, but I'm not known for my artwork, but you can see that the intention there is that they would be equal distance apart. Okay, here's 2, so its opposite would be negative 2. 3, negative 3, 4, negative 4, 5, negative 5. So if you were looking at this, kind of like how I have it drawn out here, integers would be, we're going to dot, 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 say negative 3, ooh, that's a terrible 3 there, isn't it? Negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, dot, dot, dot. Okay, so it goes on forever that way, and forever that way, and each one of them is an opposite has its own opposite because they are equal distance from 0. So that's what we're referring to when we talk about integers. We're talking about all those negative and positive numbers. They are all part of the integer set. Okay? So we want to be able to understand those, and actually we want to be able to apply those to real world situations because, believe it or not, we use integers often. Okay, we don't always think about the fact that we're using them, but we do use them often. Okay? But let's start here with example 1. It says to find the opposite of the following integers. Okay, so remember what I said, it's the equal distance from 0. So if we look at 4 here, okay, and some of you may already know it, you're thinking, I know this, Mr. Darnall, I got this. Alright, well I'm just going to visualize it for you. Okay, I think math is a good thing to always visualize. So if I put 0 here, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 4. So I want its opposite to be equal distance away, right? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, negative 4. Okay? So they are both 4 units from 0. Okay? This one's in negative land, this one's in positive land, but they are 4 units away from each other. So here's 4, here's negative 4. So the opposite of 4, terrible writing today, the opposite of 4 would be negative 4. Alright, let's see, can you see that one? Here is negative 11. Alright, so if I was to do the number line, running out of room here, so we'll make this really small, hopefully you can see this. Okay, so negative 11 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Negative 11. To the left of 0 on the number line. Okay, so while we're talking about that too, the further left I go, okay, if I just keep going left, the farther left the number, the smaller the number. Okay, so if you look at numbers on a number line, if it is to the left, it's the smallest number. So we're getting smaller here, so here's 11, but we want its opposite, so we want equal distance from 0. So we're going to go back the other way from 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and there's 11. Okay, equal distance from 0. Okay, so here's negative 3. Its opposite would be 3. Here's 15. Its opposite would be negative 15. Right? Not too bad there. All right, so now let's talk about graphing it. Okay, and we kind of already did that just there. So it says graph the integer and its opposite. So to graph it, first off, you need a number line. Now, number lines sometimes throw people. Okay? I can make the little marks in the number line start wherever I want to. If I want this number line to start at 100 and go up, I can. Okay? Because of the number I'm dealing with here, I am going to start with 0 in the middle. It doesn't always have to have 0 in the middle. If I wanted each of these spaces to be counting by 2s, I could do that if I wanted to. Okay? So know that your number line can adjust, the look of it can adjust to fit what you need. Okay? So in this situation, I want them all to be equal to one number. Okay? Make sure I have plenty of room here to get them all in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just perfect. And then to graph this number, what I mean by graph it is right here on the number line, I'm going to put a dot. Okay? Now notice where the dot went. It went on the number line. I didn't hover it up here somewhere. Right? I didn't put crazy X's or anything like that. In fact, I need a paper towel or something here to mark where I've just messed up. Okay? I didn't want to do all of that. Okay? So I just put a dot on the number line, and then I'm going to label it. There's 7. Now, I want to graph its opposite. I need the equal distance away. So I'm going to go the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But this is -7. And I'm going to put a dot right there to show that integer. All right, so same thing here. I've got -3 is my integer. And I want its opposite. So negatives to the left of 0, getting smaller as I go further left. 1, 2, 3. So here's -3 on the number line. Equal distance from 0. 1, 2, 3. There's its opposite. I want to make sure I put my dot there to show that I have graphed those. Okay, so that's graphing an integer and also its opposite. And that's just graphing a number in general on a number line. Okay? It's a very simplistic thing. Okay? Don't make more out of it than what it really is. It's literally just put a dot on the number line to show that location of it. Right? And then here we can see equal distance from 0 of those. Now, let's talk about situations. Okay? Using an integer to represent a situation. So it says write an integer to represent the situation and tell what 0 would represent. Now this part right here, tell what 0 would represent, sometimes gets a little confusing, a little tricky. And again, sometimes we make more out of it than what it really is asking. Okay? And it's not, well, we'll get to it in just a second when I get to that part. Okay? Write the integer, what I mean is, tell me, is this a negative or a positive situation? Now that's the only thing you have to do when you're telling me the integer to represent that. Is this negative or is it positive? So you have to look for clue words. Okay? Just like when we're trying to decide if it is a multiplication or a division problem, we're looking for clues. So let's read the scenario here. Mr. Darnall withdrew $200 from his bank account. Now, first of all, Mr. Darnall should not be withdrawing $200 from his bank account because it's not there. So that's not going to be a good situation. But what we need to look here is now we need to decide, is this a negative or a positive situation? So the key word that I see here is withdrew, which means I went and I took it out. Now if you think about that, is that positive or negative? Right, that's like subtraction sort of. So I took that out. So if I was to write an integer to represent this situation, I would say that the integer is -200. Okay? That integer represents the situation. That's all that happened. Now, this last part here, tell what 0 would represent. I'm not saying if I had $0. Okay? What I'm talking about in this situation is 0 is kind of like no change. Okay? Because we don't know how much money I started with. I might have had $400 in here. 400 is my starting point. So in a weird sort of way, 400 is like 0 there. 400 would be the no change point. And then I withdrew $200. So I took out 200. Okay? If I had started at $1,000, 1,000 would be my starting point. So 1,000 is kind of like the 0 point on the number line. And I know that's weird because I'm saying that 1,000 and 0. Okay? But think of 0 in the situation when it says like what would 0 represent. 0 is kind of referring to the no change. If there was no change in this situation, what would that be like? And so for this I would say 0 represents Mr. Darnall not withdrawing or depositing money. Essentially, 0 would represent my account was left unchanged. Nothing happened to it. That's all I was talking about there. Okay, the 0 point. It's kind of if nothing changed. Let's try another one. 2 more of those actually. Okay, here we go. SMMS, South Marshall Middle School football, gained 15 yards on the Lakers. So we got a little football game here, and the Marshalls gained 15 yards. So here's my clue word, gained. I added to that. Okay, so if I was looking for an integer, it would just be 15. Okay, now if you want to, you can put a positive sign there to show that this is positive gain. Okay, now what would 0 represent? Well, think about no change. Okay, so 0 would represent the Marshalls didn't gain or lose yards. They stayed right where they were. Now we don't know where they were. They might have been at 0, okay? But they might have been on the 50-yard line. But they stayed on the 50-yard line, and that's what 0 would represent. Okay, last one here. Mr. Darnall fell 15 feet from a ladder. Well, that's not good at all. Who wrote that? Mr. Darnall didn't fall from a ladder, though he is clumsy, and that is very possible. So this is a very likely situation here. Mr. Darnall fell 15 feet from a ladder. Okay, so I look, and the key word there, fell. I dropped. Okay, landed right on my head or something. So the integer, negative 15. Okay, and then 0 represent would be, I would say, Mr. Darnall, can't spell my own name, there we go, Mr. Darnall didn't move. Okay, we don't know what point I was on the ladder. Maybe I was on the very top of the ladder, but I didn't move. Maybe I was in the middle of the ladder, but I just didn't move. That's the 0 point. Okay, and then if I fall or if I climb, that represents the positive and negative integers. All right, and then lastly, now this is a little bit weird, okay, but it's a situation called the opposite of the opposite. Okay, the opposite of the opposite. So we really think about this for a second. If I take the opposite of something, and then I take its opposite again, well, where am I at now? Okay, well, I'm right back to where I started, right? I mean, that's like saying if I go this way, turn, take the opposite, but then I take the opposite, I'm back this way again. Okay, I'm right back to where I started. So the opposite of a number is always the number itself. So let's look at 5. If I wanted its opposite of the opposite, well, the opposite of 5 is negative 5. But the opposite of its opposite is 5. So notice I'm right back to where I started. Okay, negative 6. The opposite of negative 6 is 6. The opposite of 6 is negative 6. Right back to where I started. Okay, one last one over here. Let me just scoop this for you. 4, the opposite of 4 is negative 4. The opposite of its opposite would be 4. Right back to where I started. Okay, that's all that's saying. The opposite of the opposite. That's one of those things where you have to stop, think about what it's saying. Don't let yourself get too confused too soon. Okay, and go with it. All right, your turn. Here's 3 questions for you. Okay, I want you to try these. There we go, now we can see it. Okay, your turn. Number 1, graph 12 and its opposite. Number 2, name the integer and what does 0 represent. So tell me what the integer is, tell me what 0 is. Doug put $60 in his bank account. Okay, look for some clue words there. And then, number 3, what is the opposite of the following integers? And you have 5, 8, and negative 9. Now, of course, you can rewind this at any point. You can pause this at any point. I would encourage you to maybe watch it again because I know you just want to see me for another few more minutes, right? So use this, take time, see what you can do, bring this in tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this in class. We're going to do some work with this, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.